Okay. So, welcome everyone to Motoroids. My name is Amit, and today we have someone who is very, very special. We have Mr. Shaju S, who's a VP and head at the transportation division at Tata Elxsi, a business which has been doing some really wonderful things with the auto industry. And cars and motoring in general is changing. Cars and motoring in general is changing a lot, and Tata Elxsi is playing a very important role in making sure that the automation of all these systems, the electronics, the software, and the safety of the cars is enhanced a lot. So, Mr. Shaju S is going to throw light on how the cars and the transportation uh, environment in India is going to be in the future. Welcome to Motoroids, Mr. Shaju S. And do let
Thanks,
us know a
Amit.
little bit about yourself. Do let us know a little bit about yourself first and what your company does.
Sure. Thanks, Amit, for having me. My name is Shaju, and I head the transportation business for Tata Elxsi. I have over 2 decades of industry experience working with a tier one company before joining Tata Elxsi. I've been with Tata Elxsi for 17 years now, handling various roles from project management to account management, and now heading the business, the transportation business. Tata Elxsi is an engineering services company focusing on three main verticals, I would say. Transportation being one of the biggest, followed by media and communication business, and then the medical business, which is a relatively new business unit in Tata Elxsi. In terms of other business verticals, we have a fairly well-established design group, which is an award-winning group, having done design and design engineering services for many customers, including a number of OEMs in the automotive industry. Um, that's a quick brief about myself and Tata Elxsi, Amit.
So, see, most of our audience are enthusiasts, people who read about cars and bikes, and they want to know about the latest technology. So, would you be able to let us know, give us an insight into how transportation and automobiles are changing, and how, in layman's terms, is Tata LC trying to or helping to change that landscape?
Sure. The automotive and cars in particular, as we know, was a mechanical device. At least in my younger days, it was a pure mechanical device. Yeah. Now it is very fast transforming into a computer on a network. That's in simple terms. That's what is happening in the industry today. Aided by connected, autonomous, and electrification work streams, there is a huge transformation happening in the automotive industry, especially in passenger car segments. Yeah, cars are getting connected with a lot of features getting enabled, which will allow you to remotely manage and control and monitor your vehicle, to autonomous driving, which will enable you to take your hands off to an extended period of time and allow the car to take control when we're talking about level 4, level 5 autonomy. And of course, what you see is electrification. Electrification is fast displacing all the internal combustion engines and taking over as the main traction mechanism for most of the vehicles. And as we can see, even in India, we see a number of vehicles coming out, led by Tata Motors in particular, who is leading, at least in India, in terms of electric vehicle rollout. So, major changes. One of the most complex systems that you see in the car is your engine, and that is getting replaced by a relatively simple device, I would say, straightforward motor. Of course, there are complexities that comes with motor, but compared to a internal combustion engine, it is fairly simple. And if you look for pictures of engine and a motor, it's a huge engine bay that you have, and it will be replaced by a relatively small motor. Yeah? So that's a transformation that is happening in the industry today.
That's very, very interesting, very promising. As we have seen in the past 15 years, we have seen that the auto industry in India has grown by leaps and bounds. A lot of manufacturers have come, and even if they are not very successful here in India, what they're doing is they are exporting a lot of cars from here to the rest of the world. And in that sense, I understand that India is very strong in terms of software. We have had a very strong footprint in software. And since all this automation, a lot of it has to do with software, can India become a major hub for creating these software for next generation cars in times to come? And what role will companies like Tata Elxsi play in enabling that?
Yeah, India is right in the forefront with the number of engineers that it produces annually. Yeah, if you look at software engineering alone, we have close to a million. Exact numbers are somewhere between 800,000 and 900,000 engineers passing out every year because focused on software and software engineering skills. So the skill availability is a huge advantage for India. A number of companies are coming to India and setting up shops. One major focus for them is the skill availability, the talent availability. And it is not just talent, it's not just heads, it's actual capability that they are seeing in India. Yeah, the education system is undergoing transformation. People passing out of engineering colleges have a lot more skill and knowledge than it used to have probably many years ago. Yeah, especially when it comes to software. Kids start coding while in school, so they come out with a lot of experience and they gain a lot of experience while even while in college. Talking about Tata Elxsi, we run a number of programs with academia, right from when the people are in their pre-final year, especially engineering students in their pre-final year, we start running programs in colleges which allows them to get a glimpse of the industry much before they join the industry. So throughout their pre-final year and final year, they undergo intensive programs along with their engineering curriculum so that they get accustomed to the way of that the industry operates and the technologies that the industry is looking for. It's not theoretical at all. A lot of practical scenarios are created, hands-on experience is provided to these people who join our programs, and which equips them to be able to be productive from almost from day one they pass out from college and join the industry. And in terms of technology, Tata Elxsi has been working with industry leaders for many years now. We have more than 2 decades of experience in automotive industry. We have worked with almost all the technology areas that is coming to automobiles today, yeah? Whether it is connected car features, whether it is autonomous driving and electrification. On top of this, Tata Elxsi has invested heavily in these technologies and created solution accelerators and systems that enables our customers to adapt and go to market quickly, take these solutions and go to market quickly and provide a cutting edge solution to its customers.
Now, based on what you're telling me, there used to be a time when car was a very complicated thing to make. The engine itself had thousands of components, and the car was made of many, many, many thousand components. And it was not easy for a car manufacturer to put all of this together. It required a lot of expertise and it required a lot of know-how. Now, what is happening is that complicated system is getting replaced by a power source, which is the battery, and now you have four motors on the four ends of the vehicle. And it obviously it's not as simple as it sounds, but relatively speaking, it's become very, very simple as compared to what it was. And a large part of how a car drives now has to do with the software systems, battery management software, and a lot of those things. In that context, sir, can you throw some light on how this landscape is going to change, and will it be difficult for the deeply entrenched players to hold their leadership position, and for the newer players to come in and quickly make a place for themselves? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, a new concept that you can see fast gaining pace in automotive industry is a concept called software defined vehicles, and that's a fact. I mean, the entire car is going to be defined by software. So what does it mean? I mean, you spec your hardware to be able to future proof the features. I mean, you want to introduce new features, your hardware is already capable of doing that. What you just need to do to get new features in is to modify or do an upgrade of your software, like your mobile phones. Yeah, that is exactly where the automotive industry is heading today. In your mobile phones, you get software upgrades which will bring in new features, security patches, and enhancements, including performance enhancements that come in. That's already there. Tesla, for example, has been doing that for many years, and that's the direction which other manufacturers are also going. Now, touching upon the complexity, you just mentioned about the complexity going away. It's true. I mean, it's still complex. The electric motors are not just a simple motor. It's a lot of complexities and design considerations that go into that. But still, comparing to an internal combustion engine, it is relatively simpler. At least from the looks of it, it looks much more simpler. It's a simple box, yeah. So what is happening now is there is a standardization happening in the industry. So, what is going to differentiate one OEM or one car from another is one, of course, is the design, the external design, and second will be the software that goes into that, software and the electronic systems that go into that. Now, what happens because of this is since the complexity of mechanical design, especially with engines, are going out, relatively newer players, especially technology companies, are finding it a lot more easier. The entry barrier is much lower now, and hence finding it much more easier to enter into this segment. And there is a concept of having outsourcing manufacturing now. Many OEMs are also doing that. Yeah, they get what they call as the skateboard designs, and then also outsource their manufacturing. They just provide the design, and somebody else manufactures for them. So this basically means that you don't need the long experience and complex infrastructure for producing cars. Yeah. So relatively newer players will find it a lot more easier to get into the automotive manufacturing segment, in my opinion. But of course, I mean, there is some of the learnings that today exist with the traditional car manufacturers, which will give them an upper advantage in terms of dynamics, stability, performance, etc., which they have perfected over many years. So that cannot be taken away. But the entry barrier is much lower than what it was probably 5 years back.
So, sir, in that context, when we talk about the capabilities are very software oriented, and companies which have uh, very strong presence in the software industry, companies which are conglomerates like say Tata, it clearly shows that they have an advantage when it comes to moving forward into the future. So, in that context, when we look at companies like Tata and Mahindra from India, do you really think that this can really launch these companies as global car makers of global repute going forward in the future with
Oh,
all the
yes.
expertise that these guys have?
Absolutely, absolutely, Amit. And we are already seeing this. Look at the way Tata Motors has progressed in the ranking for automobiles in India. They have quickly climbed to the number two position, and it will be pretty soon they will reach the number one positions. And there is a huge demand for electric vehicles, for example, even in India. And Tata Motors is pretty much the only OEM today having their own product in that segment. And then products like Nexon are selling like hotcake. Similarly, as we understand, Mahindra is also making significant investments in electrification domain, and we would soon see product launches from those companies as well. India is a huge market, yeah. Not so much probably for the high segment vehicles. That also is changing, of course. The number of BMWs and Mercedes sending in India is fast increasing. So India itself will become a huge market for these customers and also these OEMs, and they are also looking at exporting to the neighboring countries to start with. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start capturing markets elsewhere as well.
So that was about the hardware and the manufacturing part, but also from purely from a software perspective, I would like to understand from you as to what are the different grades of software companies which are providing this software, and how capable are we as a country and as an industry to take on the challenges which are thrown by the international car manufacturers? Are there any gaps that are there, or can we do everything that is demanded by them? Are there some gaps, or like we can do everything that they ask us to do?
See, from a software perspective, I don't see any gaps. Yeah, we are the country is quite capable of delivering the software that is demanded by global OEMs. And even if you look at the OEMs today, I wouldn't assume that any of the OEMs have any software which has not been written by Indian companies. Yeah, at least one piece of software will be there for sure. Now, what today is missing is the overall system side knowledge, probably, and that is fast changing with a lot of investments happening with OEMs in India and as elsewhere. We can see that people are gaining a lot more knowledge on the systems, and very soon we will be quite, I would say, capable of delivering almost all the systems that will be going into these automobiles. If you take Tata Elxsi, for example, as I mentioned earlier on, we are working on all the systems, and 90% of our engineering force is in India. Yeah, only 10% is abroad, and they are there for proximity to customers more than anything. So the core development is happening in India with Indian talent. So that itself is testimony that yeah, the country has the potential to be able to cater, and there are hardly any gaps.
Now, when we talk about electronics, when we talk about smartphones in particular, we see that there are two major operating systems that dominate the world. There is the iOS, and then we have the Android, and that's the reason why these American companies are controlling the most, of the revenues and the uh, benefits that are there to be drawn from the smartphone market. Similarly, are there any operating systems or platforms for automobiles also which have been developed in recent years? If yes, do we as a nation or as a company also have a platform which probably can be tweaked or built upon for various different systems on automobiles?
Yeah, most of the leading OEMs today are working on their own, what they call as the platform or operating system. MBOS from Mercedes-Benz software. Volkswagen is also working on a similar software platform. There are tier ones who are working on software platforms, and Tata Elxsi as an organization is engaged with many of them in this software development exercise. Tata Elxsi has its own SDV roadmap. So SDV is software defined vehicle roadmap. One of the key components is coming out with what would be termed as operating system for a car. It is basically a software a platform which will be then capable of building various features on top of that.
Now, that is about the software systems, but
Yes.
for the layman, sometimes there are systems which are built on top of the hardcore system that drives the car. What is visible to the naked eye. So that part sometimes is the infotainment system and the instrumentation. So things which are visible to the consumer, does Tata Elxsi also play an important part in creating those systems or those software which are uh, visible to the user, like the infotainment system interfaces or instrument consoles? We these days have a lot of cars coming with customizable instrument screens. So, does Tata Elxsi engage in creating those systems as well?
Yes, absolutely. Earlier on, I spoke about our design team. Yeah, let me start with the design team. One of the key offerings from the design team is HMI design. HMI is human machine interface. The take in an infotainment context, you can see a number of screens, and most of the infotainment systems today are touch screen infotainment systems. When you scroll, you get different screens. Yeah, these are all created. Each individual screen is created as bitmaps, or starting with wireframes, they create bitmaps, and then the business logic is built behind that to be able to simulate the actions that are taken by the user, yeah, and then respond to the request coming from the user. So HMI design is a very core strength, especially our design team has a lot of strength in house to do the HMI design, and the software teams write the business logic for that, for infotainment systems. So many leading infotainment manufacturers are our customers, and we have been extensively working with them for many years. I can't name any of them, but if you get into a car, it is very likely that you will be using a system which has software written by Tata Elxsi sitting in the background of your infotainment system. Now, we also have what we call as an e-cockpit internal design. It's both the hardware and software designed by Tata Elxsi. We showcased this in CES continuously for 2 years, last year and the year before. in CES in Las Vegas. And this particular design, this is a new concept that is coming out as far as infotainment system goes. Yeah. So normally your infotainment, your cluster, your HUD, if you are familiar with the head-up display, these are all different ECUs. And one of the trends we are seeing is that this is all getting consolidated into a single hardware piece, which will then drive multiple screens. And that is exactly what Tata Elxsi has designed and showcased. And we are now in the process of taking it into production. We are talking to multiple vendors. One of the customers is in advanced discussions to take it into production in 2 to 3 years from now. We have done POCs on multiple platforms and also demonstrated that in vehicles. Yeah, so that's what we have been working on, Amit.
One major gap that we're seeing, I was at one of the events recently, and uh, as I discussed with the leaders of various different car companies and bike companies in India, the major bottleneck that they're facing that is bothering them at this point in time is the chip shortage. Uh, and in that sense, India still doesn't seem to have developed in-house capabilities to even create chips which are not very high end. In that sense, can Tata Elxsi also step in? Can we see Tata Elxsi stepping in the future and uh, maybe turning into a company which is into software as well as hardware, such that they are able to offer end-to-end solutions to any kind of need?
Um, as of now, there are no plans to get into the production part of it, but we are already working with many chip manufacturers for the silicon design. We have a very strong hardware design team, which is capable of doing prototype design and prototypes. Of course, for prototypes, we use our partner ecosystem for manufacturing of boards, etc. FPGA capabilities are existing within Tata Elxsi, and of course the software. So with this, now we are in a very strong position to be able to provide this solution. The question about whether we'll be, if the question is about whether we'll be making chips, probably not in the very near future. That is not a plan that we are working on.
Now, there may be a lot of overlaps between auto and other transportation. Uh, like you have avionics for aircraft, you have software for locomotives as well, for industrial machinery. So, does Tata Elxsi provide services or software for, say, civil aviation or for defense aviation or locomotives? So, do you guys work for all these industries as well? Do you have solutions for these industries as well?
Absolutely. We have one of our ECUs sitting in Mars, for example. Yeah. So we have worked with space program with ISRO. We work with the defense organizations in India. It's an adjacency for us. Yeah. The reason we got into these adjacencies is to offset any challenges that we will face with automotive business in the longer run. So adjacencies for us is rail, aerospace, and farming, mining, and construction equipments and defense. So farming, mining, and construction equipments is an area which is not very much tapped into, and we are seeing a lot of investment into electronics and a lot of electronics going into farming, mining, and construction equipments, including autonomous driving technologies. Yeah. So we have customers, we are engaged with customers, and we are working with customers who are in all these segments.
In terms of the sheer size of this industry right now, what are the numbers right now, specific to India, in terms of the total turnout of uh, turnover of various different companies that we have in this space, and how big can it get?
I don't have exact numbers handy, Amit, but I can have that sent across. But we are seeing a lot of growth in these segments. Yeah, rail, for example, the infrastructure development in India, as you can see, is quite tremendous. High-speed rails, metros getting implemented in major cities. Latest one being Pune, which our Prime Minister recently flagged off. There are other metro programs and expansion programs for existing metros that are running. So that is with respect to rail. High-speed rail corridors are being created across the country. That is the second development that we are seeing. With the smart cities, by 2030, as per the estimates, probably 60 to 70% of the population will move to cities. And there is a need for creating public transportation infrastructure, etc., which is the focus of the smart city concept that is being piloted in the country. So there will be a lot of investment on infrastructure, and hence that will definitely help the non-automotive segment to grow faster.
Now, sir, as I see it, you guys are the designers of the future of mobility in a sense. How the entire mobility landscape is changing. It's changing very, very fast, much faster than it has ever changed in the history of mankind. So, in that sense, can you give us a picture of what to expect in the times to come? Can you, like, let our viewers, the people who don't understand technology too well, a picture of what are the future technologies that they can expect in their cars, in uh, on a day-to-day basis when it comes to mobility? What are the things, the amazing few things that they should expect?
Yeah. Um, what you see in movies today is going to be a reality tomorrow. Yeah. Self-driving cars, for example. If you go to Bay Area, there are companies like Uber and Lyft providing cars with autonomous taxis, which are autonomous. Yeah. So that's going to be a growing market for us. That is going to be more rampant, and you will see more of that in India also soon. Um, the technologies like ADAS, it's picking up in India. What you see today with the launch of by MG, they have introduced a lot of autonomous driving. I mean, ADAS features in India. Yeah, and that we are seeing that many of the OEMs are making it a standard fit for their vehicles, especially the high-end ones. All come with park assist features, surround view cameras, driver monitoring systems is becoming mandatory in Europe. So if you are a long distance driver and if you feel drowsy, the system will warn you and probably force you to take a easy measure and take a break. These are systems that are coming in. Yeah. So, and connectivity, of course. You have seen connectivity features getting implemented in India as well. You can remotely access your car. You can remotely lock, unlock. Those are some of the minimalistic features that are already there. There will be more such features. You will be able to turn on the car, turn on the AC, condition it to a particular temperature before you even reach the car. So those are the things that are under development. In fact, some of these are already there in European market, etc. And we expect those to come to India pretty soon. And Indian OEMs are also picking up in terms of technology. They also want to provide cutting edge technology to its customers. So we will get to see more of that in Indian market as well.
One last question that I have is about ADAS technologies. Now, we have various levels of autonomy, and while some cars here are offering features like lane keep assist and emergency braking and a lot of other things, but I do understand that if you go to level 5 or higher levels of autonomy, cars have become really, really smart. Although the legislation is not allowing the cars, those highly intelligent cars, to fly on the roads for public safety. But India being one of the most chaotic environments for a car to drive in, knowing how these systems work, would you say that if a prototype of the highest level of intelligence is deployed and all the cars have that level of intelligence, uh, would it be a safe environment for people to drive autonomously in an environment like India? I mean,
Yeah,
the gist of the question is, has the technology evolved to a level already where it can take care of itself without any safety hazards?
yeah. I'll pick on one of the statements you made. If all the cars are equipped with this technology, yes. But for all practical reasons, Indian roads are not ready for autonomous vehicles. Yeah, especially L4, L5. L1, L2 features, as you can see in the vehicles today, yeah, that's very much possible, and it will be helpful also. But L3 forward needs a lot more discipline on the roads. Yeah. L4, L5, I would assume that it will take a lot more time, many more years before it comes to Indian roads. Okay, but L L4, L5 is something that we have tried out. Tata Elxsi, we have a car in our Trivandrum facility and also two in Bangalore facility, which are capable of L4 features, at least L4 driving. It can drive autonomously. We have implemented features like autonomous parking. I mean, you can use your mobile to park your car. You can get out of your car and ask it to go and park. It will park itself. That's something that we have implemented. Such features will come in, but driving 100% autonomous on the roads, I think we'll have to wait for that for so many more years before it comes to Indian roads.
That's very, very interesting because we see a lot of cars here which can park themselves. You have this autonomous parking systems employed in some of the cars from Germany, and Indian cars are getting, close to getting that capability as well. So exciting times indeed for all of us here. But I personally believe that it cannot happen unless the government also participates and the industry and the government work hand in hand, because for the next generation of cars, the way the infrastructure is made in India is probably not going to work out. So in that sense, is the industry, the software industry and the hardware industry, are they in talks with the government trying to specify as to what exactly is required for the future and to create a blueprint for the basic hygiene, the basic requirements for such cars to ply on the roads? Because as we see right now, the roads are really, really bad. They cannot, like, as you rightly mentioned, they're not fit enough for these autonomous cars to ply on them. So in that sense, is there a plan? Is there a conversation happening between the government and all the other stakeholders? And uh, if that is happening, what is the way forward? What is the plan for this next, say, 5, 10 years?
There are discussions happening. There is a lot of interactions happening between industry and the government. Let me take an example. For example, seat belts. Yeah, seat belts as a system is pretty new to Indian market, and we as a country have been lagging in introducing legislations for some of these things. Airbags are becoming mandatory now, but airbags, I worked on airbag systems 15 years back, and that time it was mandatory elsewhere. Yeah, 15, 16 years back, I have been working on airbags. So that time it was mandatory in Europe and etc. But in India, it is just coming in. Likewise, the ADAS features are not mandatory in India. None of the ADAS features are mandatory in India, but some of them are mandatory in Europe, US, etc. So you are very correct in saying that, yeah, this has to be a joint effort by the government and the industry. And I would say the government is going in the right direction, taking inputs from the industry and implementing some of these things. There are discussions happening to make some of the ADAS features also mandatory, making Indian roads a lot more safer than it is today. And we are also looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. It was very, very insightful. I'm very sure that people who are interested in the future of car technology are going to find this very interesting and it'll add to their knowledge. My heartfelt thanks for joining us today, and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Amit. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye bye.